All right, here we are one more time with the Unfair Advantage podcast. I'm Jeff Bowie. This is a special launch. I'm with Connor Eagan, who's the Senior Director of Sales at Hyperproof here in Seattle. And I've been trying to get you on for a while. And I think maybe with the banking news and the economy, I got you to surface, give me 20, 30 minutes of time. And I really appreciate you making it.
Yeah,
Again, I get the chance to talk to people who are in the tech sales hiring world, who are sort of curious about what's going on in general. And it's just that we seem to have an event, and whenever that happens, it's great to hear expertise from somebody in your position. So, Connor, I'm going to just jump right in, let you introduce yourself, tell us about Hyperproof real quick. If you want to start in on some of the SVB Bank stuff that you're
mhm.
from your unique perspective, I'd love to hear it. Or else I'll ask some follow up questions.
Well, first
Welcome.
off, the intro music, Jeff, was super exciting. I must have had my speakers cranked up too loud. It was like shaking my laptop. But yeah, it's great to be here. I'm Connor Eagan, Senior Director of Sales here at Hyperproof. My third year here at Hyperproof, I joined 2020 to help figure out product market fit. I've had the chance to work with hundreds of organizations as they improve their security posture and help mitigate risks. So really, like when the news around SVB happens, that's clearly an outlier type event. Really, that's a risk, and somewhere someone was hopefully predicting for it, and then also working to mitigate it if that happens. So that feels kind of analogous to the business we run. But don't want to get too deep into Hyperproof right off the bat. But glad to be here, and thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, you bet. It's great to have you, and it really I do want to ask a little bit about that because I know that Hyperproof isn't a fintech solution, but surely you've got a group of people that are security risk minded, risk averse minded. So sort of what was talk to me about. You don't have to. I think everybody kind of knows what's been happening.
Mhm.
What happened in your world? What was sort of the reaction that you saw from your point of view and maybe some of your network's point of view?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've lived through a few of these events that are like the 1 in 100 type events in the last 3 years, so it feels a bit tough. But what we are seeing in our space in security and compliance is really a shift toward, for the whole business, how can we identify all of the possible risks that could occur, and then putting in controls to mitigate those risks. We happen to start with security controls, right? Information security controls, things like preventing users from getting into your systems without proper access. Great example, right? That's a common way that hacks happen is someone gets your password, they get into a system. So then you have a control in place to mitigate that, to prevent a risk of someone logging in and getting rid of some of your data. So when you think about a different risk, like a financial type risk, we have customers that use Hyperproof to manage their infosec risk in one area, financial in another, legal in another, and then all of that helps them make decisions around investments. So do we need to buy more cybersecurity tools? In the case of this SVB situation, do we want to bank with multiple banks to ensure that we're not single threaded if something happens to one? I don't think many folks probably predicted that, but it's certainly possible. When I think about the last like 72 hours, 96 hours, it was certainly a tumultuous time, and everyone was asking like what's going to happen. Friday was kind of panic in the market. Saturday, everyone raised the alarm, hey, we need to fix this ASAP. And then Sunday, luckily, the Fed stepped in and said they backstopped the deposits. So my friends in tech, most people I talked to, were reassured by Sunday night that things would smoothen out. And this week has felt surprisingly normal given the nature and the amplitude of the news this weekend.
Yeah, it definitely does feel like we've sort of surfed over a wave, and no one's jumping out of windows. But it could have been the other way around, right? It could have been had there not been a Fed assistance program of any sort. What would the impact look like?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I won't play economist too much. I was worried on a personal level, like if the startup ecosystem, which is really the innovation economy, if where we're all banking, if there's suddenly a failure there, I think it would have a huge impact among innovation in the country, and probably would have spread to regional banks as well, and other folks where there's kind of regional, the mom and pop type lenders that are actually driving a lot of the economy. We would have seen a large flight to all the big four.
Yep.
Everybody would have put their money in JP Morgan and Bank of America, which is probably still happening. But it's good to see, due to the action, that things resolve quickly.
You said an interesting word there, in innovation, and considering the headwinds that have faced tech over the past 9, almost 12 months, what do you think this does this add to it, or are we just tough and resilient at this point?
That's an interesting. I mean, there's been headwinds, but I'd say there's equally been tailwinds. Like COVID was a huge boom for tech, and then a ton of money has moved into, venture the last few years. So that has helped spur a lot of investment, kept companies going. Certainly, these events are a cause for pause and maybe reassess what's the business model, what are people approaching, what are the types of investments they want to make. I think we're seeing much more measured investment across the board,
Mhm.
um, both in our customer base and my other friends who are sales leaders. Is it's ultimately has to be a what's the return of any project, and then obviously what's the cost, but also what's the overall risk of the project.
Mhm.
That is just something that I don't know. 5 years ago wasn't as much of the equation. Is now certainly a part of most conversations I have with CISOs and CFOs.
For sure, for sure. And obviously in the hiring space, the talent space, we've seen a big shift over the past, 6 months to I mean, you can't again, it's kind of a strange market, isn't it? It's like you read about the layoffs and you see all this big news, and Facebook does, multiple rounds of tens of thousands of people. But are we again resilient? And so a thing like the SVB bank, of course, it could have been worse, but are we sort of on track sort of for a healthier, I hear that term thrown around it, or what sort of, I guess maybe what I'm asking is what's the what's the crystal ball? What's your crystal ball say? What are we looking at over the next 3, 6, 9 months?
I mean, I think that's a big question. I don't know that I can as much look ahead. If I could speak, what's in the rearview mirror a bit. Folks got a little excited. Funding got a little frothy last year. We saw huge valuations. We saw a lot of companies hiring, sometimes, to excess in retrospect. And it's been a tough tightening for a lot of companies. We were fortunate to have grown in a little bit more of a thoughtful manner, and have been fortunate where we're still hiring, right? We just hired a couple more folks in Q1 and just got out 2 offer letters accepted yesterday as our sales team continues to grow. So yeah, I see probably it depends on the company, right? If you were a bit more thoughtful in your approach, maybe continued growth on that pattern. For folks that had a rocket ship type growth, they're probably seeing maybe a steeper decline. It probably also depends on stage, right? So I feel most empathy right now for the late stage private companies that were just doing all they can to just crank up revenue, getting ready for an IPO. And there's a lot of folks that we work with in that space. They're the ones that have been hurt the most, right? With this sudden change in the valuation. And so they felt it tough. I think for most companies, it's going to be kind of the same thing: continuous, healthy growth, try to keep this year with a positive momentum. We're, keep the wind in our sails, if you will. But TBD, really, what happens in the next 6, 9 months.
Yeah, I hear you with that, and I think it's unfair that we get a lot of the news from the people who are either at the largest side of that scale or maybe the highest impacted, because you're right. Conversations I've had with people are like, it's a startup. We're being smart with our money. We're not just out there like burning cash.
Yeah,
So it's an interesting situation. But it does mean, from our side on the recruiting, we do see a lot of a bigger uptick, excuse me, in availability.
hmm
What are you seeing in terms of the talent pool?
yeah. I'd be curious your perspective. You probably talked to a lot more folks than me, but it felt like last year was very, very difficult. Comp went through the roof, and it was very hard to recruit. We have a very high bar here at Hyperproof, and so I think in a competitive market, you're spending a lot of time, a lot of cycles finding the best candidates. Whereas now things have changed. You've got top, really elite performers from SaaS companies that were just unfortunately sometimes due to layoffs. And so I think there's a lot more elite, top 5% type sellers out there that are looking for something. And oftentimes they're looking for, I miss the days of building. We're talking to a
Mhm.
lot of folks that are coming from the mid-sized software companies, and they're, 1,000 employee type orgs, and they miss building and they miss having an impact and contributing. That's what we tap into. We look for folks that are, authentic in who they are. They're excited to build. They want to wear multiple hats and just like do what it takes. It's a fun time to be at Hyperproof, and I think it attracts a certain type of person too.
Yeah, I bet that's but that's an interesting process. Are you? um, what's the word I'm looking for? When you're interviewing, are you looking in for a particular kind of individual? Is you or trait? Because obviously you're going to have a job description that's got your qualifications on it. Beyond that, right? What is it that you're intangible that you most look for?
Yeah, it's a few things we look for. Just some characteristics like, is the person authentic in who they are? They're on a journey, they know themselves, they know what they're looking for. And that comes through in the first call. It's often they're very enthusiastic based on that information. Um, Curiosity is a big thing we measure folks on. And it's just you can tell folks that are curious about the world, about their job, about their personal lives. They ask a lot of questions. We find that's a really good skill set to work with customers because ultimately we're just solving problems and you have to come from a place of curiosity to really understand the problems a company's going through to help solve it. So that's a big one. We look for high IQ and high EQ, and we try to test that in various ways throughout the interview. And then I'm a fan of Mark Robert's, so we look for coachability as well. Like to ask questions around how they finished in their sales org, if they had to rank themselves, and then how did they not finish maybe better than they did, or something they learned along the way. That type of coachability is really important. We're just changing so much as an org. We need people who are able to adapt as we change.
So coachability, authenticity, curiosity, those are all things that I think any hiring manager would say, oh yeah, we want that for sure. I mean, at least I don't talk to anybody who doesn't want those things. What's your secret sauce? Anything in particular you use as a tool when you're interviewing or vetting people to say, oh yeah, that satisfies my need for that particular category?
Depends on each domain. I mean, curiosity to me comes down to um, like asking when they ask questions to understand something, and then they ask follow up questions, and they're truly like they're peeling back the onion to really get to the depth of an answer. Like the way they ask questions of me, that's a huge indicator. That's really what I'm looking for. Oftentimes, I'll provide half the interview where they get to just drive, and how they drive the interview, how they ask questions, gives me an indication of how curious they are as a person, how they think, how they structure their time. Coachability, I go back to Mark Robert's where he talks about if you were number one, tell me why, and then in years when you weren't number one, what did that number one person that was different do? And that's the kind of the secret question. A great seller will say, oh yeah, this person, they did really good account mapping that year. They got to the CFO and they did really big deals because of it. A more common question is territory timing. I just didn't, I could have done better, but I didn't quite have the patch. It's like, that's what we hear often. And of course that's not exactly what you're looking for.
So there's a little bit of just looking for a disqualifier in there if they can't sort of get you to almost sell you, right? Not in a salesy way, but a questioning way.
Yeah, just being self-aware of what their weaknesses are. That we all are working to improve in a variety of domains, and the more they have really honed in on that, if they can demonstrate they've been given feedback and that they've adjusted to it, that's a great indicator.
That's good. That's good. I like that. Yeah, really getting under the skin makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to keep you for much longer. How would you describe the culture that you hire into? People are stepping into there.
Yeah, I think we just touched on some of it, right? You've got those characteristics. A big thing we emphasize here is we're all looking to learn from each other. So we come on in, check the ego at the door, and just have an honest discussion. I encourage all of our new hires to challenge us. Like when you see things that are like new and improved and work for you as a seller, that's fantastic. Like adopt it. And when you think things can be slightly different or you saw it in another company done differently, we ask folks to chime in. And that's a part of it is like we'll have healthy debate about the best way to approach a solution. It isn't tied to ego. It's not tied to what we've done in the past. There's no like golden PowerPoint process doc that has to be done this certain way. It's about constant improvement. That's really core to what we're doing. It's fun. We're building. It's year 4 of serving customers, and that takes a certain mindset of we're going to have to figure a lot out. You have to be comfortable in like there will be times when there isn't an answer that's really written down. Let's get to the best answer, run with it. And if it's not the best answer, look, we'll come back, we'll measure and assess and try to get a better one for the next time.
Sounds like a great place to be.
We're having fun.
Cool.
It's been an interesting ride. I joined in March of 2020, like classic time to, join a startup. There's 20 people at the time.
Right.
But I think maybe the biggest key to how we found ourselves where we are is really just being transparent. And that's internally, we're transparent with each other. With our prospects, we're very transparent. It was important in the early years, especially. Here's what we do well as a company. Here's our core value prop on our product. There's other domains that are adjacent that we don't serve, and we're just being transparent up front that we may not be the best fit unless this is what you're also looking for. And then talking about the vision. This is like where we're going to go in 5 years. And if they align on vision, people love that transparency just up front. And it helps us just build a better product because they know exactly what we want to build. It attracts the right type of customers. I think it's a great feedback loop.
Yeah, I feel like you've just drawn a direct line from sort of your philosophy to your recruiting to efforts to your culture. That really you couldn't do it otherwise.
It's definitely due to the founding group. So, Craig Unger from Microsoft, he's the core belief behind the company. We got to build trust between organizations, and our sales leader, Matt Lato, all about transparency. And that's been there from day one, how we serve our customers and how we work with each other.
Sounds great. All right. So overall, I'm getting, hey, don't panic, stay healthy in the fundamentals.
Yeah,
We're all
I would go
in
further
a good
than that.
place.
I wouldn't even use the P word. Like things
Yeah.
are going great. The market is stable. There's a lot of people still buying. There's a lot of people still investing. A lot of problems to be solved. People are looking to solve them with smart companies that are transparent in what they do. We're excited about it. It's going to be another challenging year for software sales, but then we'll probably see a nice 5-year boom like we just got out of. So it's a great time to be here.
Well, it's really valuable and helpful to hear it from somebody who's got boots on the ground in that particular area. So thank you very much. Anything else I've left out?
No, I appreciate the time today, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me on. Anything at any news on the talent reach side?
We have a similar philosophy, right? We're looking forward to steady growth and there's a little bit of uncertainty in the market, but having conversations like this with guys like you point out that it's not as the perception is not as bad as it could be. So
Yeah,
all
that's
good.
great. I've
We're
always
excited.
appreciated my conversations with you, and Jeff. I've known Jeff for a long time. I think he set a great culture over there. So keep doing
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah. Jeff and Eric definitely drawn that direct line from where they're going to the candidacy to culture. So like it a lot. All right, man. Well, hope you'll come back again. I'll pick your brain for a longer next time, but this has been super valuable. Have a good one.
Excellent. Have a great day. Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.